appeared in public on Sunday with an Easter blessing and pop-mobile tour through a cheering crowd in St. Peter's Square. Cardinals are meeting at the Vatican to plan the conclave to elect his successor and to make other decisions about running the Catholic Church. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
AP's Julie Walker walks us through possible contenders for the Church's next pope.
Even though cardinals don't campaign for the job of pope, there are always front-runners going into a conclave. Cardinals who have not reached the age of 80. While it's a sacred and secretive process, some possible candidates include Erdo, the Archbishop of Budapest, Marx, the Archbishop of Munich and Freising, Roulette of Canada, Parolin of Italy, Sarah of Guinea, Schonborn, the Archbishop of Vienna, Tegel of the Philippines, Zuppi, the Archbishop of Bologna. And the idea of an American pope has long been taboo, but there's also the Chicago-born Prevost. The winner must receive at least 2/3 vote. I'm Julie Walker.
People around the world continue mourning the Pope's death. Flags flew at half-staff in Italy, India, Taiwan, and the U.S., and soccer matches in Italy and Argentina were suspended in honor of the Pope, who was a lifelong fan of Argentina's San Lorenzo Soccer Club. This is AP News. Gethin Coolball has the latest on sports.
AP Sports, I'm Gethin Coolbaugh. The Pistons snapped their NBA record 15-game postseason losing streak with a 194-game 2 win over the Knicks to even their first-round Eastern Conference playoff series. Cade Cunningham scored 33 for Detroit coach J.B. Bickerstaff's team.
We did what we were supposed to do. And that was it.
In the West, the Clippers tied their first-round series with a 105-102 Game 2 win over the Nuggets. Stanley Cup playoffs, Alex Ovechkin's first playoff overtime goal sealed the Capitals' 3-2 East first-round Game 1 win over the Canadiens. In the West, the President's Trophy-winning Jets took a 2-0 series lead with a 2-1 win over the Blues. The Stars beat the Avs 4-3 in OT to tie their series 1-1, while the Kings held off the Oilers 6-5 in Game 1. And Kenyan Sharon Lokedi and John Correa were the Boston Marathon women's and men's winners, respectively.
I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty showers and thunderstorms possible late today. Otherwise, increasing cloud cover with a high in the lower 70s. We'll have winds out of the southwest around 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then for tonight, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy low near 57. Wednesday, a slight chance for showers and storms, cloudy high of 74 degrees. Then on Thursday, sunny high of 75. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 43.
Spring into deals with fresh savings at Lowe's. Right now, get 5 Stay Green or Premium 2 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. Plus, get up to 35% off select major appliances and save $50 on every $500 you spend on select LG appliances. Shop in-store or online today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/30. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See associate or Lowe's.com for more details or qualifying items. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Dazzling decal on Daisy's Donuts window. Bold banner at Barry's Barbershop. Prominent poster at Penny's on Park Place.
This is your sign. Well, signs. To try Staples and see the difference. Get $15 off signs, banners, and posters when you spend $75 or more.
From Staples, and I couldn't miss it.
Ends 4/15. Visit staplesconnect.com/printbig for details.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, progressives, and welcome to the April 22nd, 2025 edition of Choose Views. Of course, we're at 773-763-9278. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, iHeartRadio, And, of course, you can email me at richard@wcpt820.com. Catch me on Substack, and you'll definitely want to check out my recent post on Substack, which I'll talk about in a moment. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and that's where you can get the Choose Views short version and long version of the show. That's a reminder to you. And also Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, and, of course, our Out Chicago and other programs that are part of our broadcast here on WCPT. Check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform because there is lots of good stuff there. So, today's show, our guests are going to be, excuse me, keep coughing. I got a little scratchy throat this morning, guys, just to let you know if you hear a few coughs. Gbenga Ajilore will be with us this morning. He's the chief economist for the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. And Wilfred Farquharson will be with us in the 7:30 hour. D-Composed. It's an ensemble member. He's a member of an ensemble, specifically a violinist. He's going to talk a little bit about the impact of music in various communities, specifically the African-American community, and getting young folks involved in music. So it'll be a good morning of guests, and looking forward to bringing that to you. Speaking of bringing it to you in our shows, make sure to tune into Joan's show today, live, local, and progressive. Joan's guests will be political science professors William Muck and Joel Ostro, journalist and best-selling author Nina Burleigh, and Heartland Signal's Rich Eberwine, with 3 stories you might have missed from our digital newsroom, and there are some good ones over there. I looked at the list. Live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. Central, WCPT, here in Chicago's Progressive Talk for 20 years. Tonight on Patty, I should say, Driving It Home, Patty will be joined by Paul Rice, founder of Fair Trade USA and author of Every Purchase Matters, along with Dan Schaefer, editor of the Recombination Area, with a Wisconsin update. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, 5 to 7 p.m. weekdays, Central Time, WCPT. Also on the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And then tomorrow's show, we'll have our great friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 with us. And we'll be joined by Mark Doyle, founder of Rags of Honor and Veteran Roasters, and Illinois State Representative Abdul Nasser Rashid. Thursday, Cook County Commissioner Yasina Morita will be back on the show. So there you go. Things to do. Okay. Where do we start? Topics today, things that we'll be talking about. Pope Francis, what do you want to see national Democrats be focused on? Universities and their power, some privilege and mediocrity folks in the administration, and a message to David Hogg and the Young Guns. So let's hit the Choose Views news real quickly, and then we'll come back to some of the things for today's show. Pope Francis, as we all have heard now, dies at age 88. The Vatican reported yesterday, as we heard yesterday morning, the first pontiff from the Americas and first non-European in the role in nearly 1,300 years, was born Jorge Murillo Bergoglio. I said to myself, practice that, in Argentina. In 1936, he was the 266th pope to lead the Roman Catholic Church, where his 12-year tenure was characterized by advocacy on behalf of migrants and the marginalized. Regularly emphasized concerns for the poor, but also regularly connected with global business leaders, building bridges, I should say, while also admonishing what he saw as the excess of modern capitalism. Pope's funeral will likely take place within 4 to 6 days and marks the beginning of 9 days of mourning. Will the courts break up Google? Google faces its latest antitrust threat as government regulators determine what changes need to be made after an August ruling determined it had an illegal monopoly on online search. The verdict, which is expected to stretch several weeks, will be appealed by Google, may force and also may force the tech giant to spin off its Chrome browser and Android operating system. No wonder my phone isn't working right today. The case comes on the heels of last week's ad tech ruling, which found Google guilty of maintaining an online advertising monopoly. Harvard funding battle that's going on is hurting the Boston area, the Boston region. The battle royale between Harvard and the White House could soon make itself felt beyond the university's campus. Harvard has a hand in everything from real estate to biotechnology to local businesses in the greater Boston area, and it directly employs more than 20,000 people. If Harvard's funding suffers, it too could enter the area where it affects the entire area, some experts say. Meanwhile, the Trump administration could yank another $1 billion in funding, according to the Wall Street Journal. I've got something to say about that in a moment. CEOs that dumped stocks last quarter, several of the country's most prominent CEOs made sizable and well-timed stock moves last quarter, per analysis by the Washington Service, which tracks insider buying and selling. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, Oracle's Safra Catz, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase were among the business leaders who capitalized on the post-election bump in share prices, but cashed out before the Trump administration's tariff announcements prompted a series of sell-offs. No wonder they're going after Letitia James. Zuckerberg sold $733 million worth of shares. Katz sold $705 million, and Dimon sold $234 million, according to Bloomberg. If you're a movie buff, a little bright spot in that space, the movie Sinners did very, very well. The supernatural thriller topped the box office this past weekend with $45.6 million in domestic debut, beating industry projections by roughly $10 million. Black Panther collaborators Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan reunited for the vampire drama, which received rave reviews and edged out the Minecraft movie. Profitability remains up in the air, however, as the film cost $90 million to produce. Either way, it's a win for original movies at Warner Brothers after a string of failures. And the numbers to watch this week. Consumers remain in the spotlight this week as University of Michigan releases its final estimate of sentiment in April. Alarms about the confidence of shoppers is raising, as well as the implications for spending, which accounts for about 70% of gross domestic product in the U.S. Report showed inflation expectations spiking at the highest level since 1981. That's my entire adult life. Amid looming tariffs, while Americans have stockpiled recently, including going on car buying sprees to get ahead of the duties and tariffs face, questions remain about future spending. Tomorrow, the U.S. Census Bureau will release key housing market indicators, including a number of new single-family homes sold and the number of new building permits issued by the government in March. Thursday, the U.S. Department of Labor will release initial jobless claims for the previous week. The U.S. Census Bureau will release its monthly report on durable goods, and the National Association of Realtors will release its monthly report measuring the number of existing homes sold in March. And then on Friday, the University of Michigan will release its reading of April's Consumer Sentiment Index. So there you go, guys. A couple of the Choose Views news for this Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will chat about a few things. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. 800-365-6303. That's 800-365-6303.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose View, 773-763-9278. So, we definitely, those of us who are, whether we're Catholic or not, we definitely have always recognize, our faith leaders, particularly the Pope, and with his death, there are billions. I think it's one. I forgot the number, but it's over 1 billion people that have, I guess you would say have thoughts, have feelings, and will be in observation and mourning during this time. And I'm not even close to someone that's a religious scholar or anything of that nature, just an aware person when it comes to faith. And it's times like this when I think people lean onto their faith for all things that matter. And that's what I will say about Pope Francis is, I've always, we go back and forth with the Pope and the role of the Pope. And I will say that the role of the Pope to me has always been someone that people looked up to, and that was their spiritual guide. Even people that are not Catholic, to be honest with you, there's a certain amount of reverence that comes with that role that I think that we've given to global religious leaders or global leaders of faith, and that can get into other faiths as well, because we've always kind of acknowledged the importance of spirituality, whether you're a religious person or of a particular religious sect or not. And the Pope is definitely one of the people that has the role of the Pope is one that's always gotten that recognition, that honor, that deference, if you will. Here are my quick observations about Pope Francis. He did the thing that I think we all should do or want to see in our lives and in the lives of others. He represented peace. In my observation, he represented mercy, and he represented inclusivity. I think that the things that he probably represented or put out as his belief system and thought process, in some ways, frustrated people, and in other ways it inspired people. And I'll lean into the inspiration side because that's typically how I try to roll. But the love and the all the heartfelt thoughts that will be out there for Pope Francis and his 12-year legacy and the papacy will definitely reign large in these days to come. He represented those things in my mind. When I sat back and thought about this yesterday, and I knew yesterday morning Devin and I talked about it, but I didn't want to talk about it until I had a little bit more information and, just not to launch in, hey, the Pope died kind of thing, but to talk with a little bit of substance. He represented peace, mercy, and inclusivity. The inclusivity part is one that sits strongly with me, and that is he wanted to have as many people follow the faith as possible. And, I'm nothing if I'm not sometimes gonna touch the third rail. And in this particular case, the Pope made it clear that he wanted to see more people in the faith. And even if they weren't Catholic, he wanted to see more people be of faith. He spoke to that. He wanted to see us be of a more merciful and forgiving and understanding society. He wanted us to have all of us to have more personal peace, social peace, and global peace. And so that's kind of why, from afar, I kind of dug the dude, like, okay. And it was, I guess you could say, based on his ascent to becoming Pope that I then had a desire to go to Rome and to go to the papal city. And it was quite an experience. I will say that. For me, Devin, it's because I love art. I love what art and artistic work can do for you, I think, in so many ways. But it was just amazing going and seeing all that's there. I mean, it was crazy. And then, and the line wasn't too bad. Got there early and all those sorts of things you try to do when you're going, to do something like that. But it was quite an experience, and I've got some great pictures and phenomenal memories. In fact, for a short period of time, the phone, one of the pictures on my phone was the backdrop. But we honor the life that he lived and the way that he impacted us in one way or another, and that's something I think for all of us to step back and acknowledge. One of his quotes, sometimes it gets shortened, but this is when I talk about inclusivity. He said that if a person is eager in their search for God, who am I to judge? I think the importance of that is that, and what he was specifically talking about is members of the LGBTQ community finding their way to Catholicism, finding their way to God, in search of God, as he said. And he gets short quoted sometimes by saying, but people just say, who am I to judge? When he actually was saying, if a person is eager in their search for God, who am I to judge? And I think that adds a lot more context to what he was trying to say about how we all, as a community of folk, irrespective of where we are in search of something. It may be God, it may be a different level of spirituality, et cetera. But that's one of the things that I take from him. Who am I to judge? It's easy for any of us to slip into that judgment, persona or mindset. And I work hard not to, and that's why you guys hear me stumbling on my words sometimes, because I'm catching myself from not saying something that's going to sound judgmental. But in some cases, but at the same time, I should say, as he was pretty good at doing from all the things that I read and followed over the years, is that he was also willing to call out the things that he didn't necessarily agree with inside and outside of the church. And I think that is a representation of someone that's lived in the world outside of religion, that has an understanding, or at least an observation of how religion can be. It can be a tool of destruction, and it can be a tool of grace. And I think he kind of embodied that from what I read over the years. So going to the Vatican was one of those things that not to minimize it, but it was one of those things that I hadn't really a desire to do until he became Pope. So I was able to do that in my lifetime. So blessings to his spirit and to his life and his service. And I think we all sometimes take a pause and recognize that, irrespective of the particular faith or religion itself or religious sect, we acknowledge the greatness that someone has done and accomplished in their role of service. So I hope we all can, in our own way, recognize that. Shifting the narrative a little bit, and you know what? I do want to play a clip that I think is relevant to sort of where we are in the intersection of sort of politics and religion and faith and all that happens in these roles of service. And we've got a clip that Devin and I put together from Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Senator, Pope Francis's last words, final public remarks, focused on this theme. How much contempt is stirred up at times toward the vulnerable, the marginalized, and migrants, Francis wrote in a papal address delivered on Easter Sunday yesterday by a Vatican aide to the crowds gathered in St. Peter's Square. And here we are, you on, I guess, just back now from El Salvador. dealing with the issue of just one of the many people who have been forcibly removed, disappeared. I mean, some might even see it as a kidnapping. It's definitely not a deportation. Where does the plight of Kilmar Abrego Garcia stand now?
Well, you're very right. I read Pope Francis's remarks. He was a beautiful soul, a pope for all of humanity, and he focused on the most vulnerable and on natural rights, on the right of everybody to be free under the law. And the whole point here that we're making is that the Trump administration needs to respect the Constitution of the United States. When you threaten the rights of one man like Abrego Garcia, take away the rights of one man like Abrego Garcia, you threaten the rights for everybody. In this case, the Trump administration is flouting the law because the Supreme Court on a 9-0 ruling said that they had to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. I was just down there, as you said. I met with him. The embassy, the Trump administration is doing nothing right now to comply with that court order. What they're doing is trying to change the subject, as if you can't comply with the Constitution and fight gang violence. I've been fighting MS-13 longer than Donald Trump probably ever uttered the words. I put together an anti-gang task force in this Washington region, Maryland, Washington, Virginia. So the notion that fighting gangs requires that you shred the Constitution and deny people's rights is just the dangerous spin that Donald Trump is putting on all this.
So, yeah, I mean, this is where, to Senator Van Hollen's point, dignity, respect, and to a great extent, staying within the confines of what our laws are here to represent. And that's one of the things that I think sometimes you see, that you can see the intersection of faith or religion and politics. In this particular space, though, I think the other part that's critically important to all of us right now is none of us want to see anyone's. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it this way. I don't believe any of us want to see anyone's human rights be tampered with. And I think that right now that's one of the reasons that when we talked yesterday with Mike Nellis, two things that are clearly Achilles heels for Donald Trump right now. You can be in denial about it all day long, but the reality is this. His numbers have plummeted when it comes to the economy. That's a data-based fact. And his numbers have plummeted when it comes to immigration. And that's largely because of how he's not handling the situations. He's just shooting from the hip. The tariffs are problematic. Virtually every story, other than what I read about the movie Sinner, is referencing what's happening to the economy. Achilles heel. This situation with Mr. Garcia is a debacle, and there are others. This is the thing that is important. I had a couple of emails yesterday that spoke to and said, "Hey, you know, the Garcia situation is a highlight situation." And there are others, not but, and there are others. So, you know, we have to be better in this space, and we have to demand better. And that's why what Senator Van Hollen has done is critically important, because it keeps us in the spotlight. They were doing their best to try to bury it and make it go away and deny and now lie. I mean, I watched a clip yesterday of Caroline Leavitt, and she literally lied on live television on Fox. It wasn't a mistruth. It wasn't a misstatement of facts. She flat out lied. And that has to be, they have to be held accountable for that. And we'll talk about some of my thoughts about that when we come back. But let's take a quick break. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Advertisement sponsored by Allied Injury Group, not available in all states. This important message from Allied Injury Group reminds you that if you or someone you love was injured in an accident that wasn't your fault, you deserve financial compensation for your medical expenses, lost wages, pain, and suffering. Don't rely on insurance companies to look out for you. If you haven't spoken to an attorney, call our legal experts now. work accident, truck accident, collision with an uninsured driver, or a slip and fall, Allied Injury Group has helped clients win hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. They're available 24/7 to take your call and fight for you. Remember, if you or someone you love suffered injuries in an accident that wasn't your fault, like being struck by a drunk driver, a collision with an 18-wheeler, were a victim of workplace negligence or more, get the financial compensation you deserve. Call Allied Injury Group for a free consultation now.
Call 800-818-2581. That's 800-818-2581. Again, 800-818-2581.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty showers and thunderstorms possible late today, otherwise increasing cloud cover with a high in the lower 70s. We'll have winds out of the southwest around 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then for tonight, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy, low near 57. Wednesday, a slight chance for showers and storms, cloudy, high of 74 degrees. Then on Thursday, sunny, high of 75. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 45.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
It's Choose View with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose View, 773-763-9278. So, the the word is out, clearly, that the administration has had has crossed the line in more ways than one, and we've got to do the work to pull them back or push them in one way or another. And you know that's obviously a complicated piece right now. But the thing that I think is important when it comes to how our representatives are stepping up is that they've got to be at the tip of the spear and talking to the media and letting it be known to the general public, and most certainly pushing back with their members on the Democratic, I should say, elected officials have to be willing to push back to their members across the aisle. They can't, no more cutting them any slack and being collegial. And as I've said before, my colleagues on the right, no, it's warfare now. And while we're trying to stabilize some of the systemic things that Trump is tearing down, they have to be willing to fight in those spaces and in those trenches to let the Republicans know, yeah, you've got the numbers by a couple of seats in the House, but we're going to continue to push back with you, and this lawlessness is not going to be acceptable. Representative Jimmy Gomez talked a little bit about that in terms of his views of the Trump administration and the rule of law. And we've got a clip for you to talk about that.
The rule of law and due process protects individuals. Doesn't matter where they're from. It doesn't matter if they're a citizen or a resident. They are protected. But the rule of law also tells people around the globe that you can do business in the United States, that you can invest here. There's going to be due process and a way of how business is done. They know that if they invest money, it's not going to disappear. They're not going to be shook down for a bribe. That's what the rule of law does. So it's not just about individuals, which it is, but it's also about bringing resources and money and investment to this country. And let's also look at what other countries are doing. They're issuing warnings to their citizens who are visiting this country. That's directly impacting our economy as well. Canadians, they used to make up 40% of all foreign travelers to Las Vegas. That is way down. And what I'm hearing from individuals that work in the culinary union and people who work in the hotels, that they're cutting hours to literally zero. So they're basically unemployed, but still listed as employed. So the rule of law is about our rights, but it's also about creating an environment that people know that they're going to be safe in their person, their families, but also in their investments and in their businesses.
Yeah, the uncertainty is really something. In the last week alone, I think I personally have had someone from Australia, South Africa, and El Salvador ask me whether or not I think it's safe for them to leave the country. And frankly, I've said, I don't know.
That's not what we should be representing, or that's not what the message should be for people to not know or to be asking the question, is it safe? And, this is one of those things that, we'll make it a little bit personal. Chicago gets oftentimes, way too many times, way over the top. And many metropolitan cities get this, but Chicago particularly gets, it's not safe in Chicago. Why would you go there? We know where that's coming from. We know that that's, oftentimes coming from the bias, some of its cultural, racial bias about Chicago. But now we got people who travel to the United States for business and for personal that are questioning if coming to the United States is a safe thing to do. So let me break this down and I'll just give you some numbers. $90 billion is the amount of money that's projected to be the losses this year because of the Trump administration's inability to navigate, if not outwardly destroy, the economy and create some issues when it comes to public safety. And then when it comes to immigration, we've got people who are concerned about coming to the United States as a visitor because they're worried about how the United States may treat them. But this is what people voted for, in the context of I voted for lower this, lower that. You've got higher in all spaces, higher elements of uncertainty and certainly higher prices. And the list goes on. So, a little bit of a pivot. One of the things that, yesterday was just, I guess you could say, red flashing lights. In a matter of a couple of days, the responsibilities of people who have been elected to political office on the right have been off the chart or that are part of the administration. And what do I mean by that? Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace. Let's just call it as it is, guys. They are in meltdown and are the epitome of privilege, white privilege, particularly, and mediocrity. The four of them. Only someone of privilege would act like Nancy Mace did. And I didn't even want to have Devin have to go through and hit the curse erase button for that horrible display by her at an Ulta store with one of her constituents. If you guys haven't seen it by now, just Google her name and you'll see what I'm talking about. But privilege is what allows her to think she can get away with that without any retribution from people who are gonna see that. It's privilege. It's that brazen privilege. I can do whatever I want to do. And she kind of threatened him. If you listen to it all the way through, you'll see that she threatened him toward the end about taking me on. But Mike Johnson doesn't have the guts or the courage to censure her, which he should. And I know this is something that people say, well, why are we talking about this? We're talking about it because it's how the Republicans are acting. And it's how we have to be willing to stand up and fight back against their ugly, nasty, disgusting, irresponsible behavior. We just do. We bear our heads on this. We bear our heads on the next thing. The next thing you know, Nancy Mace is calling some woman some nasty name, or person of color a nasty name, or someone she damn near referred to this gentleman based on his sexual orientation. So we do have to call that out. We let this stuff slide, then what we're going to let slide next. So that's one. The next one, going back to the Pope, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a couched way, made an absolutely disgusting comment about the death. They're going to try to head fake us on. That's not what she was saying, blah, blah, blah. But she hates the Catholic Church. She doesn't like Catholics. She's been public about that. Talking about the issues with priests as it relates to molesting parishioners, boys and girls in some cases. But I guess she has a blind spot for that happens in the Protestant church. It happens in the Baptist church. And right now, there's many men in the church of her faith, of her choice, that are being caught for the same thing. we don't have to get into the levels of how much it happens in the Catholic Church. I'm not trying to go there. I'm saying that, once again, privilege is allowing her to speak in this manner about was it the devil, Satan is dead or evil is dead now? I mean, you guys look it up. But again, it's just that privilege allowing them to kind of land softly and say what they want and do what they want. The Pentagon is in meltdown under Pete Hegseth, and there's word out now. I mean, this is where we always laugh, Devin, when they say, well, we don't know till we know for sure. Yesterday, there were at least 5 stories that I heard and or read, I should say, that the Pentagon, specifically, the White House is starting to look now for a replacement for Hegseth. Well, you think? Why does it have to? He replaced a man who's a career military American of service for this garbage. And then the story that nobody wants to talk about, but you can't not talk about it because there's some security issues here with regard to Kristi Noem. Now, people want to say, don't talk about it. We shouldn't talk. I get it. I understand that. At the same time, it's a security issue. This is the part where I go back to mediocrity. Each of these people, Hegseth is mediocre at best. Green is loudmouth, yeller, nothing effective. What bills has she gotten done? And Nancy Mace, 4 legs of a stool of mediocrity. And now we have a person who, we can tease all day long about her shooting her dog and that story, which is just horrible in its essence. But the real issue here is that this woman was put in a position to deal with something that we all are concerned about. And the reason I tie this together back to the story, there's a reason I laid it out this way, is we got people that want to come to the United States, Devin, for travel and for personal and business, that are asking, should I come to the United States? Is it safe there? We got bad actors that want to cause us harm. And a person that's at a security level of that of Hegseth and of Noem, and she can't keep her purse protected. I don't care, whatever the cash is for, who knows? I'm not going to speculate about that. I'm going to trust to the extent that I can. The cash is for whatever the hell it was for. That's not the point. It's not the point of that the cash is in there. What's the point is, bless you, all of her access and information and security stuff, and it got snatched. At least that's what they're telling us. It got snatched. Try not to speculate, you guys. But the point is, this whole administration, it's not just the Pentagon in meltdown or chaos or in disarray. The entire machinery is in disarray. Somebody threw a bucket of sand in this administration's machinery. It's in total disarray, total chaos. Don't get distracted, though, from the stuff that's happening when they're trying to snatch people's money as it relates to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Don't get distracted. I'm just telling you that this administration is in disarray because they have weak A people in these roles, mediocre folks. How in the heck does Pete Hegseth not know? And if he doesn't know, he should be gone, that you don't use this particular app to invite people to a secured meeting. How does Nancy Mace get away with disrespecting one of her constituents? Because she's using white privilege and her arrogance. Let's just call it as it is, y'all. How does Kristi Noem let this happen? I know there are millions of women across the globe that have not had their purses stolen. They don't have security around them. Devin, they got common sense. If I got $3,000 sitting in one of my bags, I'm making sure it's with me for Cecilia. It's not getting away. I'm not even going to let Secret Service handle that bad boy. It's staying with me because nobody's going to snatch it from me. But if I've got all these other items with me that are part of my job, there's some issues. I have a national security concern with this as much as anything. particularly when we have people asking, is it safe to come to the United States? And somebody snatches a bag. We don't know why, how, for what, all that, but it happened. But it's a reflection of something that we have to talk about. An administration that's in chaos and disarray and filled with people that are mediocre at best in all their roles. And that's the reality of where we are right now. Let's take a quick break, guys. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
WCPT 20th Anniversary Replay 2020.
I just think that, Biden is in the catbird seat right now. According to this Reuters poll, he's got a double-digit lead. So I don't know what's going to happen. Now, here's the other deal, and I want to get into this a little bit. This coronavirus, this COVID-19, it's frightening. People are very concerned about it, and justifiably so. I think that the administration, that Trump himself, have totally botched this. They were too late to react. They lied about the dangers. They muzzled some people from talking about it. They still have not provided enough tests. And Trump said, and this is irritating, that anybody who needs the test can have the test. That's not true.
Listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose Views. When the White House Correspondents' Dinner fires comedians, it's time we take back the mic and brutally mock them in the process. Join the Political Voices Network for Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner, pay-per-view Saturday, April 26th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, including WCPT's very own and host of WCPT's 20th anniversary on Saturday, May 3rd, Hal Sparks, and many more. Catch Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner live on Saturday, April 26th, instead of that other thing. Stream it on demand for just $20.26, because that's a good number to think about. Head over to meethook.com live/not not to get your pay-per-view and join us in supporting free speech. Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Again, head over to meethook.com. meethook.live/not to get your pay-per-view and join us in supporting free speech. Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner for Americans who aren't afraid of comedians and free speech. Contests running on WCPT are open to listeners 18 or older and residents of the greater Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area. One entry per person, one winner per household. Void where prohibited by law. Listeners may only win or qualify to win once every 30 days. Complete rules are available on our website at WCPT.com by clicking the contest tab, Devin. All right. How are we looking on time? We're doing okay. And also make your way over to Heartland Signal. Some great posts, great pickups.
What caller number is?
And in terms of winning a streaming code for the contest, for the Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner, let's see. Caller number 2 will get a free code. So give us a call. Tell Devin I'm the second caller, and you'll get a code. How about that? I like to make it fun. All right, keeping the conversation going about the inadequacies and the what I will call ineptitudes and stupidities of the Trump administration. Let's talk about this again. I played a clip. We played a clip yesterday from a renowned economist and professor in this space to talk about just how brainless the folks are when it comes to this administration and the incompetence and incompetent people. But don't take it from me necessarily. But we put together yet another clip from Professor Jeffrey Sachs talking about Trump and his lack of ability to do this job.
People said,
this doesn't make sense. Even the very rich people that gave him the money for him to get into office started saying this doesn't make sense. The hedge fund managers who were his big campaign contributors, Elon Musk, who paid for his election and became prime minister, he said this doesn't make sense. And then the markets said this doesn't make sense. Not only $10 trillion, but as the finance minister said, interest rates started to rise because people began to dump U.S. Treasury debt.
The safest thing in the world, apparently.
So, interesting what happened. It's not quite true that he reversed things. First, he left on this 10% tariff, except for one country, for China,
145%,
where he raised the tariff rates. That's because the United States has a deep, neurotic attachment to China. The U.S. political system hates China. Why? Because China's big and successful. And so that the U.S. hates. It's a rival, it's a competitor, and so this is the one thing he left on. Now, he's going to mess up everything with this, too, because in a trade war between the U.S. and China, China wins. China does not depend on the U.S. market very much. It's about 12% of China's exports. China will do just fine. It's just dumb policy. There's no more, sorry to say it, there's just no more explanation to this than that. It makes no sense. Now, it raises, if I could, just one last point. How could this happen when it makes no sense? And that people should understand, we are in one-person rule in the United States. Our political system is in a state of collapse. What President Trump did is an emergency decree. Everything he does is an emergency decree. Literally, you can go on to whitehouse.gov and then follow the menu to executive decrees. And there are dozens of them. And each one starts the same way. With the powers invested in me as President of the United States, I hereby declare A, nonsense, B, nonsense, C, nonsense. Because he's king. Those powers are not invested in the President of the United States. They're invested in the Congress. You read Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution. It says that all duties originate with the Congress. And specifically in the lower house, all legislation has to start in the House of Representatives. But the U.S., starting in 1945 after World War II, became a military state to a large extent. And so it sprinkled in its legislation, emergency, emergency, emergency. And Trump doesn't have to prove anything's an emergency, he just has to say something's an emergency. So suddenly the trade deficit became an emergency, and on that basis he issues a one-person rule. Even his aides don't know what he's doing. You raise one final interesting issue, which is that the market recovered about $4 trillion when he reversed. Anyone who knew that 5 minutes before made billions. This is not the cleanest government in the world, I can tell you. I'd be hugely surprised if some people didn't know just a bit ahead of time, starting with members of the U.S. Congress, by the way.
And there you go. I mean, this is from a professor that doesn't take necessarily a partisan position. He looks at the data, he looks at the facts, and he leans, over time, he's leaned more toward how Democratic administrations have done a better job with the economy, and the numbers back that up. But he's more specifically saying how absolutely incapable Donald Trump is in this role. And he's using the real, he's using factual information to validate that. And this goes back in part to what I said yesterday about our strength right now. The thing that we need to be focusing on is his Achilles heel. Two of them, in fact, or both of them, one on each leg, is that the fact that he has this massive, we've seen these massive losses and massive amounts of fear because of the tariffs, proves that again and again. And as I said earlier, this conversation around deportation and the border, yet another Achilles heel. But we put together one other clip that I'd like to play for you guys before we get to the break on what the professor said toward the end about not the Congress making money and knowing a little bit more about what was happening behind the scenes, but the infighting that's going on, of people not really knowing what's going on in the administration when it comes to some of the decisions that are being made in general, but specifically when it comes to backing off with regard to the tariffs. And Devin and I put together another one about some of the fighting that is taking place in the administration.
There is one faction in the Trump camp that wants to change all the rules of the game. Let's call them the warrior protectionist. Get rid of the international trading system as we know it. No need for the World Trade Organization. We simply take on every country and we get an advantage out of them.
This is the Peter Navarros of this world.
That's the Peter Navarros of the world. That's the Stephen Millers of the world. And it's the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. There is another faction in the Trump camp who simply says, no, let's just negotiate with countries to get a better deal from them, so we use this as a bit of a play. This would be Scott Bessent as the Treasury Secretary, for example, Kevin Hassett at the Council of Economic Advisors. On Monday, when the markets had made their initial death plunge on Thursday and Friday, that group that wanted a more conservative approach, like Kevin Hassett, came out, and he actually said there may be a 90-day pause. And that sent the stock markets rising for a few hours. But the other faction kicked back. The warrior protectionists said, no, we stay the course. Navarro said, no negotiations. And for a couple of days, it looked like they had Trump. Remember we've got young viewers out there, maybe even at this hour of night. We're going to kick everyone's backside. That's what he said just yesterday. But what happened overnight is key, and you've just identified it. It wasn't just the stock market. It wasn't just the fact that you already are having layoffs at certain U.S. factories. It wasn't just that Republican senators are getting jittery or Republican donors, like the billionaire Bill Ackman, who said we're going to a nuclear winter. It was the bond market where people were dumping their bonds and no one would buy them. And all of a sudden, the bond, which has always been the safe haven, that everyone would buy U.S. bond, that got shaken. So the people who were the conservatives, Bessent, Hassett, went into Trump, said, you've got to back off of this. And I can tell you the tell as to why that happened. The trade representative, Jameson Greer, who's one of the warrior protectionists, he was in a hearing in Congress, and they asked him, what do you have to say about Donald Trump just announcing the 90-day pause? Greer didn't know about it. The decision was made without his knowledge. But that fight within the Trump administration will continue, which means the chaos will continue.
And that's the point. The chaos will continue because the reason they don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not communicating. There's one faction that wants to do one thing. There's another faction that wants to do another thing. And what's crazy about this is that it comes back to what I said about the economy is driving their craziness because they really don't know how to navigate and manage the economy. They don't know how to navigate, how to properly use tariffs that can be used effectively if used properly. But they don't understand that either. At least that one faction, the warrior faction, they just want to cause havoc for other countries. They want, Donald Trump, what did he say, 60 countries that come want to kiss my, rear end? That's not governing. That's not being a deal maker or anything of that nature. It's chaos. So we have to pay attention, and I'm going to talk about this pretty much every day, certainly many days, is that we have to pay attention to the things that they're trying to take away with distraction, because that is part of what chaos is designed to do. Just watched a movie this weekend with the actor Jason Statham called Chaos. It's been out for a few years, but it reminded me, and that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of leaned into this conversation these first 2 days this week. Let's take a quick break. We've got a couple of guests that are going to be with us in the second hour. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Thanks to our loyal WCPT listeners, the WCPT 20th anniversary broadcast is officially sold out. But you can still enjoy the broadcast by listening to WCPT Radio on Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hal Sparks will kick things off at 11 a.m., then hand it off to WCPT hosts Richard Chu, Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff at 1 o'clock. Surprise guests from WCPT's 20-year history will also join us. Scroll through 20 years of WCPT Radio with legendary interviews, shows, and pictures on the WCPT 820 website. WCPT's live broadcast is sponsored by Max and Benny's Restaurant in Northbrook, Fazio Insurance, Smart 265, Kane County Dems, Southland Friends of Labor, Democratic Party of McHenry County, and McHenry County Democratic Women. It's the WCPT 20th anniversary live broadcast Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Only on WCPT 820, Chicago's only progressive talk radio station for 20 years.
Need to hire quality candidates fast? You need Indeed. Our video interview tool makes it easy and effortless to meet with candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. The Vatican has released the first images of Pope Francis, showing him in his casket with the Vatican Secretary of State praying over him. AP's Charles de Ledesma reports on this week's funeral and public viewing.
Pope Francis's funeral has been set for Saturday at 10 a.m. in St. Peter's Square, and a viewing of his body will begin on Wednesday in St. Peter's Basilica, days after the popular pontiff died at age 88. History's first Latin American pontiff charmed the world with his humble style and concern for the poor, but alienated many conservatives. He last appeared in public on Sunday with an Easter blessing and pop-mobile tour through a cheering crowd in St. Peter's Square. Cardinals are meeting at the Vatican to plan the conclave to elect his successor and to make other decisions about running the Catholic Church. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Flags flew at half-staff in Italy, India, Taiwan, and the U.S., and soccer matches in Italy and Argentina were suspended in honor of the Pope, who was a lifelong fan of Argentina's San Lorenzo Soccer Club. The White House backs Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth after news broke out of a second Signal group chat. AP Sagar Magani reports.
Media reports indicate Hegseth shared sensitive military details in another Signal chat. The first time was in a chat that mistakenly included a reporter. This time, his wife and brother were in the chat.
Just fake news. They just bring up stories.
The latest revelation comes after Hegseth dismissed several senior aides amid an internal probe over information leaks.
Sounds like disgruntled employees. You know, he was put there to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. So you don't always have friends when you do that.
Both President Trump and Hegseth are defiant.
Anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
But neither man denied Hegseth shared the information. Top Democrats are calling for him to be fired.
This is AP News.
The NCAA has passed rules that would upend decades of precedent by allowing colleges to pay their athletes per terms of a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit settlement expected to go into effect this summer. The 9 proposals passed by the NCAA board were largely expected, but still mark a defining day in the history of college sports. For the NCAA rules to officially go into effect, the changes prescribed by the House settlement still have to be granted final approval by a federal judge. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
Harvard has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. Last week, the federal government froze more than $2.2 billion in grants and contracts to the university after the institution said it would not comply with the administration's demands to limit activism on campus. The university says the government's demands are a threat not only to the Ivy League school, but to the autonomy the Supreme Court has long granted American universities. I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty showers and thunderstorms possible late today, otherwise increasing cloud cover with a high in the lower 70s. We'll have winds out of the southwest around 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then for tonight, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy, low near 57. Wednesday, a slight chance for showers and storms, cloudy, high of 74 degrees. Then on Thursday, sunny, high of 75. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 46.
Retired or retiring soon? How much money do you need to live comfortably? Retirement Planners of America is here for you. Would you like to have financial peace of mind? Here's how. Step 1. Find out the amount of money you'll need to retire. Step 2. Have a plan to get there. Step 3. Make sure that plan can take advantage of market gains but protect you from market losses. Discover how to do all 3 with a free consultation at 800-508-6108. That's 800-508-6108.
All investments involve risk, including losses. Past performance does not guarantee future results.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Well, you guys, we like to have smart folks on the show and that know a heck of a lot more than I do on certain subjects. And in this particular case today, we have one of those professorial folks with us to chat a little bit about some of the economic issues that we're all facing right now, and what his view on some of the issues with the tariffs and what they're causing to the undercurrent of our economic platform. Chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities is Gbenga Ajilore. Professor, I should say. Have to give the man his due. Good morning, Professor, and welcome to Choose Views. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I give you your honor because you hold a PhD in economics, and you happen to know a little bit about this stuff. And just wanted to welcome you to the show and thank you for being with us this morning. You've been really, for lack of better words, as the chief economist of the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities, you've been one that's leaned into a number of budgetary issues and economic issues for a long time. But tell us a little bit about your career and sort of how you have navigated over the years as an economist, and the things that you've watched and really paid close attention to in your career.
Yeah, so I started out about 20 years ago as an economics professor at the University of Toledo. A lot of my research focused on the impacts of race and government spending. So I've always been concerned about how, basically we achieve inclusive growth. And then about 8 years ago, I moved to D.C., started working at a number of different think tanks, the Urban Institute and the Center for American Progress, with a focus on rural issues specifically, and focusing on how we build back prosperity for rural communities. And so after that, I got a great opportunity to work as a senior advisor at the Department of Agriculture, specifically in the Rural Development Mission area. And so a lot of the work I did was basically put into practice the stuff I've been working on as a professor and as an economist at a think tank. And so now I'm here as a chief economist. We're now looking at how are things impacting the economy, and then most importantly, who is it impacting and how.
So with your time with the rural development, the Department of Agriculture, when we talk about this world, this country that we live in, we often, we get caught up in our different tribes and we get caught up in our different geographical designations. And rural is oftentimes, for lack of better words, given a bad rap. But there are some things that happen in rural communities from an agricultural standpoint that just don't happen in metropolitan areas by sheer topographical design. As it relates to development, though, have you seen in the last 5, 10, 15 years an increase or a decrease in funding and appropriations and development in our rural communities throughout the country? What's been your observation there?
So what I see a lot of is that there's been, fluctuations in terms of how funding goes to rural communities. But I think what we're missing and what's missing in the conversation is that rural communities have assets. And what we need to do is have our funding leverage those assets. And so it's not about the level of funding, but how is that funding going in? And then the second part of that is the capacity of rural communities. So certain rural communities have a capacity to receive funding, grant funding, loan funding, even private sector funding, but a number of places don't. And so I think some of it we have to think about how do we build the capacity of those communities so that they can determine what they're able to do. And so some of the things that we're seeing that this administration is doing is diminishing that capacity, that access to federal funding for these communities to be able to achieve their own prosperity.
And that's obviously harmful from just purely, let's talk about politics and voting, to a group of people that have been deemed or labeled historically as ones that support, Republican administrations. But in this particular case, we're seeing that group is at the tip of the spear of groups that are being harmed, or communities that are being harmed because of these sort of centerpiece cuts and items. Is that true?
That is true, but I think when we think about for example, I work at a C3, so I can't talk about politics or voting.
Right.
But I think what we have to look at and what we have to focus on is, are they able to access funding? And so when you look at the last administration, there was, trillions of dollars of funding, but a lot of it didn't get to these communities. And a lot of it's because of that structure in terms of the state capacity. And so one of the things that the previous minister tried to do was build up that state capacity. And again, what we're seeing with these executive actions by this current administration is that they're diminishing the state capacity, but not even just in terms of development, but just in terms of basic services. So you look at what's happening with the Social Security Administration and the field offices there, that they're closing that field offices, they're closing the staff, increasing wait times, diminishing the customer service for the people who really need those services.
So when you talk about capacity, what's your definition of that as it links up to the assets? I mean, you said a moment ago that the rural communities have tremendous assets, but without capacity, those assets don't really get maximized or utilized properly. Explain that a little bit better if you can. Not better, but more in depth for us out in the cheap seats.
Yeah, I understand. So federal government provides resources through grants, loans, and guaranteed loans. Now, to be able to get those, you have to apply for it. And so if you think about the application process, you think about how you can get access. So some of it is online. You think about rural communities with no high-speed internet. You would need people who help out to fill out the applications, to process those applications. And so at rural development where I worked, we had state directors, and we had field offices, so usually anywhere from like 5 to 10 field offices, and then you had staff in those offices. So if a rural community wanted to, say, get a loan for a community center, then they would go to the field office, work with staff, and then they would help them through the application process. But without that staff there, a person's not going to be able to do it on their own. So you think about a community of 1,000 people, and you have a mayor, but the mayor also works at the post office, also has 500 different jobs. Is that person going to be able to have the wherewithal to be able to apply for a grant, or say have to do a feasibility study or do environmental review? So that's where the capacity issue comes in. City like Chicago, city like LA, you have a grants department, you have a planning department, you have 10 or so people who have the experience of doing that, and that's not an issue. In these rural communities, it's more of an issue, and that's where the capacity comes in, the staff, the resources to help out.
So do you think, Professor, that there will be, we've already heard stories about small businesses in smaller communities or rural communities that are shuttering already, and some that are facing bankruptcy. What do you think will happen? Where do you think they will go? Do you think that they will migrate to move to other states, migrate to other states? Will they move into more suburban and or urban areas to find opportunity? What's your calculus in that space?
A lot of that's going to depend, but I want to give people credit that people are very resilient, that people are always going to find a way to find something different. So a small business might shutter, and then they might go work for, probably a lower paying job, but they're going to find a way to bounce back. Other people might move to other cities and things like that. I think one of the things that concerns me is, some of the policies that are happening that's going to actually accelerate that and make small businesses or even small farmers who are on the cusp go adversely. So I think about the tariff policies, that you have tariffs across the board. You have tariffs not just on goods that are going to make it expensive for consumers, but tariffs on inputs that are going to make it more expensive for businesses. So that's going to accelerate the loss of jobs and the loss of businesses.
So the tariffs, as you just mentioned, are accelerating these closures and these losses, and putting more pressure on the system. And they're sweeping tariffs. So they as with sweeping anything, you may not get to the maybe the more specific use of a tool. And in this case, as so many people have been saying, tariffs are not bad, but used in a sweeping, all-in way are reckless. And, as I've seen it, there's some of the highest, or this is probably the largest that tariffs have been in a number of decades, if not longer. Is that correct?
We're looking at the highest effective tariff rate since the 1930s. So we're looking at almost 100 years. And what's difficult here is not just that they're high and that they're sweeping tariffs, but they're also not consistent, and they've been implemented in a chaotic way. So you have, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we had that there was going to be a 25% tariff on Canada, and then the president, for some reason, got upset, raised it up to 50%, and then 4 hours later dropped it down to 25%. So even if you had a high level of tariffs or sweeping tariffs, if businesses and consumers knew that was going to be consistent for, say, the next 6 months, or let's say it's a 60-day tariff, then they're going to be able to plan. But we don't know from day to day, hour by hour, what the level of the tariffs are, so nobody can plan and no one can anticipate what's going to happen, and that's going to have detrimental effects to our economy.
We played a clip in the previous hour that spoke of the internal strife that's taking place in the administration, and I know you've got to balance out how you respond to certain questions that we would ask you. But I'm curious of your thoughts about the number of people who are pulling for lack of better words, pulling Donald Trump in one direction. And then others that are pulling him in a different direction. Some are saying that the tariffs are, that the pushback from other countries has caused for the president to blink, and that's the reason that he pulled back and did this sort of reset, this 90-day pause. Do you have an opinion on that, or are you allowed to share your opinion if you have one on that?
I think the best way for me to answer this is that in any administration, there's never going to be consensus. That there's always going to be individuals who have different ideas, different understandings of how the world works, how policy works, and that's the way administration should work. But what has to happen is that there has to be a consensus on a specific policy, a strategy, and a plan that's going to be announced to, the country, to the world, so that people are able to understand which way to go in terms of, okay, are my prices going to rise? Well, by how much? And then I can plan. And so what we're seeing this internal strife lead to, uncertainty in the economy and uncertainty in markets. And that's what you're seeing in stock market and bonds and things like that, is that people can't anticipate what's going to happen and therefore can't make these 6-month, 1-year plans for their business or as a consumer.
So let's talk about what's legal and what's not. I've read and reviewed and heard so many different people speak to the fact that, the cutting of funding is illegal or unlawful, or whatever the wording might be. Excuse me, Professor. What's your take on that? What are you seeing? If it is, if it isn't, and if so, how is it? Excuse me.
So that's going to be up to the court to decide. And but I think the only thing I could speak to my previous experience working at rural development, where a lot of the programs we had where you have these contracts that you would work with the businesses on, and then they would have these agreements and conditions that they would have to follow. And so as long as they follow those things, they would be able to get reimbursed. And so what we've seen so far is that the government has held that funding, and and this is just causing problems for these small businesses because they don't get the money up front. They have to outlay the money, do the projects that they signed up for, and then get reimbursed. And so the way I look at it, the way I focus on it, is that you have all these farmers, these small businesses who've put the money out, put the projects in thinking that they're going to get this money reimbursed. And so now this is going to have, again, adverse impact on the economy because this is money they were expecting, and now this is going to affect their businesses and their revenue streams.
And that's, again, goes back to how they planned. They had a goal. They made a plan, and that goal, that plan was based on there being some consistency and regularity to those grants being delivered on. And when that doesn't happen, now not only have they put in the time and the work and the energy, and maybe some real cost, real dollars, they've also then not gotten what they need to continue to keep moving forward with that project or with the work that they themselves committed to. Is that it? And that's kind of your read on this, correct?
Exactly. So now they were just, some of these people, this is like, $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 that they've put out, knowing that believing that they're going to get that money reimbursed. Now that's going to affect their cost structure, affect their profit structure if they're never going to get that money. And I think one other thing that we can't miss is that this work with the government, this getting a grant from the government or a loan from the government, is built on trust. They don't get that money back. Now they've lost trust in the government. And losing trust, it takes a long time, if ever, to be able to get that back. And I think that's the most important thing, is that the people, the American public, should have trust in the federal government. And doing something like this, they lose the trust in that federal government, which is something that's going to take a long time to recover from.
And I'm hearing that same sentiment from our foreign allies, that there's a concern about, can they trust the federal government, the United States federal government? And if they can't, they are showing signs of, working less with the United States and more with other global powers. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, that's a recipe of international policy disaster.
I mean, it is a struggle. So I think of two examples here. So first, in Trump's first administration, he complained about NAFTA, and then they redid NAFTA and had the USMCA, the Mexico-Canada agreement. So now he's upended that by putting tariffs on our allies, Mexico and Canada, even though it was a deal that he made. Mm-hmm. And so then the question is, like, if our allies can't entrust us, then, what about other people? And then the other one is, with the 10% sweeping tariffs across, you end up having China, Korea, and Japan, partnering together to try to figure out how do they counteract the U.S. tariffs. And so if you know anything about history, having China, Korea, and Japan actually working together, given their long, violent history, is like shocking. Yeah. And so, but that's, he's up, this administration is upending the global order, and basically what this does is it actually increases the cost. And then he says he wants to make deals. This administration says they want to make deals. But the question is, what are the goals? And that's where the trust issue with foreign countries come in, because they don't know what this administration wants in terms of being able to get those tariffs off, because there's no consistency. And this goes back to the policy debate within the administration. So that's the other problem, is that the foreign countries are not going to be able to understand what it is that this country wants.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, and asking about this, I wanted to, there's so much that I want to ask you, so I appreciate you being with us this morning, Professor. But the tax cuts that, not the tax cuts so much, but the program cuts that are taking place and the tariffs are, when you talk about where this is heading and what's the plan and what's the goal, it seems as though, once again, these program cuts and these tariffs are going to provide some sort of avenue for tax cuts, but the tax cuts are not going to go to the 99% of Americans, or certainly the lower 50% of Americans that actually truly need tax breaks. They could almost go to a zero tax for so many people that are making so much less in income. But it seems as though that nobody's really getting that. I mean, we talk about it, but nobody's really understanding the impact of that sort of flipping of the tax structure based on these program cuts and tariffs. Is that true? Are you seeing it that way, or no?
No, that is true. That you look at the ultimate goals, like the one thing that's consistent with this administration is that they want tax cuts. This was true in the first Trump administration. It's true in this one, that they're, pushing $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, and not just even extending the previous Trump tax law. It's actually adding on top of that. And so the argument is, like, we're going to cut, $4.5 trillion from taxes, but we're going to pay for that through program cuts, through Medicaid, through SNAP, through education spending. But even that, what they put together is about $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, won't even come close to paying for it. And so what ends up happening is that not only are we cutting programs that benefit people, that put food on the table, that give people health care, we're actually going to increase our debt and deficits, all to pay for tax cuts that's going to be benefit to the wealthy. And then you add in the tariffs, that's going to increase costs. Then you end up having this, widely skewed distribution, where the top 1% would gain about $25,000 in, after-tax income. And then the bottom 20% are actually going to lose, $2,000. And so how does that help boost the economy? It doesn't. And then now you add on to the fact because of these tariffs and because of the across-the-board tariffs, we're going to have a heightened recession risk. And in a recession, which hurts a lot of people and it really hurts people at the bottom end, we're cutting the programs that are actually going to help people weather the storm in a recession through Medicaid and SNAP cuts.
And on top of that, we're going to see businesses that we're already seeing signs of this, having to reduce staff, having to fire people, and in some cases having to shutter. So the income source for people who are most impacted, that oftentimes may work for medium to small size businesses, is gone. We've got weighted tariffs on and then a tax system that's putting more burden on what our income sources should be. And it is a recipe for disaster. And I don't like to be negative about things, more realistic, but it's a disjointed, chaotic administration right now. Do you see, Professor, any ways out of this other than a flat-out change in administration, which is going to take an election for that to happen?
I would say that the biggest thing is advocating for these programs. Talking about the importance of Medicaid, that Medicaid is not just about, Medicaid is beneficial to a lot of people. I think about what's happening in rural communities, that states that had Medicaid expansion were more likely to keep their rural hospitals. You look at SNAP as being able to put food on the table, provide food for kids, and, help with hunger. You're just talking about the importance of these programs is telling that so that our representatives are not going to vote for these things. Talk about the tax cuts and why the tax cuts are not going to be helpful, that tax cuts do not boost the economy, that we actually need more revenue. And so, talking about the importance of the federal government, the role of the federal government, how the federal government can help boost our economy, help strengthen our economy, and then also understanding the impact of tariffs and the uncertainty that's being created. And so I think if we tell the story and show the numbers and the impact of those things, then our representatives can then say, okay, well, maybe we need to go in a different direction. Maybe if we want to alter our tax bill, we do, more revenue raising, thinking about, where can we actually cut spending, where can we be more efficient, why cutting federal staff is detrimental to our economy and why we need to be building our staff, going back to the state capacity in rural communities, helping them thrive, making sure that our safety net is strong, that it actually is a safety net that catches people, keep telling these stories, I'm going to continue writing about these things and talking about these things. That's what we do to be able to, shift the trajectory, the direction of this country.
And right now, I mean, so many people that I've had on the show, Professor, have said similar things about activity, contacting our congressional leaders and our state leaders, and having the push has got to be 24/7. The representatives, the elected officials have to know that this is not a successful track that we're on. And to your point, the more that people are making their leaders and elected officials aware of that, the better chance we're going to have to slow this down, potentially bring an end to it by going in a different direction. So the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, what would you say is your primary mission as we wrap up this segment today?
Our primary mission is to be able to help people understand how the budget process works, the importance of our programs and to why our programs are necessary, how do we strengthen that, the safety net, how our tax code can be used to help us thrive and boost the economy, and then also just to basically talk about why inclusive economic growth is best for everyone.
I hope that we can have you back in the future because there's clearly so much more that we can talk about when it comes to not only tax policy, but also development in our rural communities and how that then has so much importance on our suburban and our urban communities. Look forward to having you back again, Professor. Thank you for being with us this morning. And let folks know how they can find you or how they can go to the site and get more information on the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So our website is cbpp.org, and we're writing a lot of stuff on budget and policies and programs, and so a lot of great information, a lot of great charts, a lot of helpful stuff to be able to be knowledgeable.
and to help everybody nerd out a little bit on what they should be looking at and trying to improve their knowledge in that space. So thank you, Professor, for being with us this morning. We look forward to having you back in the near future. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now. Yeah, the conversation could go so much deeper in this space. I mean, we have so many people that we talk to that, as I've said over the years, that have a particular knowledge, a specific knowledge, a credible knowledge, a researched knowledge. And that's what Professor Ajilore has done and is doing, is bringing data and information to these, kind of complicated topics. So I appreciate being with us this morning. Center on Budget and Policy Priorities Chief Economist, Dr. Gbenga Ajilore. We'll be right back. Number 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views.
Think Theory Radio.
Theoretical astrophysicist Dan Hooper. If there's someplace a light year away from now, there's nothing I can do now that can influence that place in less than a year. No matter what I do, no matter how I build my quantum machine, or no matter what I entangle or what I quantum teleport, nothing I can do here can affect that until a full year has passed, allowing light to get there at the speed of light.
Think Theory Radio with Damian Perdue. Saturdays at 6 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Excuse me, miss. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can you recommend a bank that offers a full suite of commercial banking products along with excellent service?
Yes, ABOC.
What about a bank that has been in Chicago for more than 100 years and really understands the local business climate?
ABOC.
But I manage a labor union. Can you recommend a bank that really understands how labor unions operate and what banking products they need?
Again, ABOC. ABOC first opened its doors in downtown Chicago in 1922 and understands the local business climate better than anyone. ABOC was founded by labor unions and still has union employees and shareholders today, so they really understand how unions tick and how their needs may be different. But whether you're with a labor union or another type of business, whether you're large or small or something in between, ABOC will always make you feel like you're their most important customer. Visit ABOC.com to learn more.
Wow, thank you, random person on the street. I'm going to visit ABOC.com today.
Member FDIC.
It's nice to know someone is on your side. Mark Drugs always has your back. No two dogs are the same. A dosage form or strength of medication that works for one dog may not work for another. A compounding pharmacy like Mark Drugs is here to help you with your pet's medication challenges. We'll be happy to help you when your pet is sick. After all, it can affect the whole family. That's why we give our four-legged patients customized medications to make it easier for them to take. For pet medication problems, first see your veterinarian, then talk to your hometown independent compounding pharmacy, Mark Drugs. If you'd like to know more about the ways we can personalize medication for each individual patient, we'd be happy to help. We are a compounding pharmacy, which means we can prepare the medication prescribed in a strength and dosage form that meets the patient's needs. Ask us how our pharmacy can help. You have a choice when it comes to your health care, and a great choice is Mark Drugs in Roselle and Deerfield, where you get better health and care for you and your pets. Check out the Pet of the Month at markdrugs.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see a few spotty showers and thunderstorms possible late today, otherwise increasing cloud cover with a high in the lower 70s. We'll have winds out of the southwest around 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then for tonight, a chance for showers and thunderstorms, cloudy low near 57. Wednesday, a slight chance for showers and storms, cloudy high of 74 degrees. Then on Thursday, sunny high of 75. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 48.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Glad to have the professor with us to talk about what we were discussing earlier in the show in terms of economic policy, tariffs, and, of course, what should be a better use of them. But right now, as he even said, not getting too political, but just stating the facts, the administration is definitely off the rails in how these things should be navigated. Music stays big in my mind, and I always am excited when I have a chance to talk to someone that's doing something unique in the music space and in the arts space. And we, being Chicago, we're a big music and big arts city. We've got universities here, college programs that really focus on and have great musical programs. We also have such great theaters or outlets or venues is maybe the best word for our performers from all different types of music and walks of life to do their thing. We have some of the biggest acts on the planet come through Chicago. But we also have what I like to say that sort of cottage industry, that local music flair. You guys all know that house music, got its kickoff and its start here in Chicago. And so many people have over the years recognized the importance of that. Classical music has been a big deal in Chicago. R&B, jazz, the list goes on. And, to that end, we, being in Chicago, and those of you who've been here know that we have so many different shows that you can go and see. But it's always nice to talk about some of the local artists, particularly of color, and the folks that have been leaders in that space. With us this morning is one of those artists from what's, I would say, one of the most unique ensemble groups here in Chicago. And with us this morning is what, excuse me, guys, I've got this coffee thing this morning. Wilfred Farquharson is with us this morning, who is one of the leaders and founders of the organization D-Composed. It's the ensemble group here in Chicago. And I wanted to welcome to the show this morning, I'm so sorry, guys, Wilfred Farquharson. Good morning, Wilfred. Welcome to Choose Views. And I apologize for that clunkiness. I've got this frog in my throat that's not allowing me to talk clearly this morning. How are you doing, and welcome to Choose Views?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
This is a very sunny day outside. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just my throat's not performing well this morning, so I'm having a little bit of a difficult time. But thanks for being with us this morning. You have been one of the what I'll call leading voices, and certainly one of the names that people are recognizing when it comes to music here in Chicago. And you're part of the music collective D-Composed. And I'm curious if you can take a moment and tell us a little bit about the group and tell us a little bit about the work that you guys are doing. You've got a really wonderful event coming up this weekend. So tell us a little bit more about D-Composed and what you guys have been working on recently.
Yes, of course. So D-Composed is a all-Black collective of string musicians that celebrate the work of Black composers from all over the world, all across the diaspora, across every time period and every genre. And we focus on uplifting the works of Black composers by collaborating with other Black artists in really great locations that maybe are not always standard concert halls, but are usually cultural staples or important for different communities across Chicago and also now across the rest of the states and the world.
Tell us a little bit about what chamber music means. A lot of people may have their thoughts about it, but what is in your experience and your knowledge, the definition of chamber music?
I believe it actually stems from music being made in the chamber room in Europe, and so it's just music designed to be played by a small ensemble, so that people could fit all in the smaller room together. So usually it's just music made by a smaller group of musicians. Usually, I think, under 10 people.
Under 10 people. Got it. Okay. So this weekend, you guys have an event going on that is on Sunday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Is that going to be in the Austin area, or where is it going to be taking place? Tell us a little bit about the upcoming event.
Yes. So the concert this weekend, this Sunday, will be taking place at the K-Rent Center for the Arts in the West Side, and that will be a collaboration with us and an artist in Chicago named Jamila Woods, which I hope everyone else knows about her. If not, get to know her because she's an amazing artist. And this concert will focus on the relationship Black people have had with the earth throughout history and kind of follow the form of kind of growing as a plant throughout the process of this performance or concert activity.
Have you seen, with regard to this upcoming event, have you seen, are you expecting, I should say, a good turnout? Do you have a kind of a sense of pre-ticket sales? Does it look like you're going to have a good turnout for this event?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really amazing turnout. I've gotten so many messages from people saying that they're so excited, and other people sharing this event. Jamila's a pretty big artist herself, and so I think just that alone garnered so much attention. That's really amazing. I know it's gotten people really, really excited to come out and see this concert.
Yeah, that is going to be exciting. So you, back in 2022, you had a pretty known and noted performance at with the Grant Park Symphony. Tell us, a symphony orchestra. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, that's actually the reason why I moved to Chicago. I was doing this fellowship program with the Grant Park Symphony, and through that I got to play with the orchestra, and I also got to premiere a quartet by this really incredible jazz composer named Billy Childs. Yep. And with that, there's such an incredible orchestra, but performing-wise, but what's so special about them to me was how nice everyone in the orchestra was and how much audiences loved coming to those concerts and how much the audience values the orchestra. Even like coming to concerts in the rain, since all the concerts are basically outdoors, people would show up like in their ponchos and umbrellas and just be down to get wet just for a concert. That really struck me.
Yeah, Chicagoans are kind of crazy about that in their music, about our music and about our sports. Is that, you know, they will definitely bear the rain and the weather to go see a football game, a baseball game, and that there's a concert in the park or a concert in one of our, you know, indoor outdoor venues. Folks will do what they got to do to take in the music. So I wanted to ask you this question, and you know, this is my show is a political progressive talk show, and our station is of that nature. But the one thing that I do want to ask, and how you've seen in your life how music has been a tool to bring people together, and what's been your experience, and what would be your output to folks when it comes to the disparities and the divides and the tribalism that we have as a society, particularly now being heightened by politics. How are you trying to use music as a tool to bring folks together? If you know, and I'm making an assumption there.
I believe music is a separate language, and one that doesn't always require words, even if it does use words at different points in whatever genre you may be listening to music in. What I think is so special about it is that I could be hearing a song in a different language, and I feel like probably 9 times out of 10, I probably could tell you whether it's happy, sad, frustrated, elated, whatever, because it's just, we all have this instinctual, intrinsic reaction to the sounds we hear, and we all generally trend towards like expressing sounds in ways that are very similar. And seeing that happen across the world in so many different ways, especially like in Decomposed, where we go and play for audiences anywhere pretty much, has been so special. And watching people in the audience bond with each other as well as us on stage during that process is so beautiful to me. So I really hope that when I make music, it just continues to do that, and it encourages other people to do that as well in their own ways, or their own art form, or their day-to-day work life, whatever it is outside of music.
It's interesting. Art, you know, someone will say that, you know, a drawing, for example, people may not get what the drawing represents and kind of can't understand what is that, how is that appealing to people, or it's in the eye of the beholder, et cetera, et cetera. But you said something interesting when you said that you think that, or the way that you approach this is that music is a different language. Maybe you could highlight that even a little bit more. When you say it's a different language, do you mean different language in the spoken language, or different language from other art, or all the above?
I think I mean kind of all the above. Like, music is its own thing. You know, every culture, you know, in ancient times, all developed their own kinds of music independent of each other. So it shows that it's something that we all just need to do, just very naturally. It's a part of human nature just to create music. And, of course, other art. I think music is so unique in that it uses sounds, and not all of it involves words, but it's so understandable and like immediately, I guess, digestible. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
No, it does, and I wanted to get your take on it. As a violinist, or what drew you to the violin? I mean, obviously there's so many instruments, and there's so many directions that you could have gone. Did you start as a violinist, or did you make the move to it? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so I'm actually a violist, which is slightly different than the violin, and I kind of chose it for similar reason as that mistake is made. Like, I had just never heard of a viola before. And so when I was a kid, I was about 10 years old, and I really loved watching Tom and Jerry cartoons. And every Christmas, they would do a Nutcracker special for Tom and Jerry. And I just loved that music so much. I joined my school's orchestra. I went to a public school, and they had an orchestra program. And the teacher brought out a violin, viola, cello, and bass for us all to choose from. And I just never heard of a viola, so that's how I chose it. And I think what kind of held me to the viola is that it's such a unknown instrument, but also because of its kind of middle child nature in the string family, its register and timbre is so unique and rich that I just never wanted to stop playing it.
So when you say middle child, do you mean it in terms of what does that actually mean? I have my thoughts, but I don't want to get in the way of what your explanation is.
So the viola is like slightly bigger than the violin, but still smaller than the cello. So it's like living in the middle of like sizing for the string family of instruments. And also because of that, its register, like where its pitches are also in the middle register and very, very similar to the human voice. And that, it's it's an instrument that usually gets very overlooked in orchestras and chamber music and actually not chamber music, but in orchestras who will primarily think of string instruments. No one really thinks about violas when you're looking at the orchestra itself. I'd say about a third of what people think are violins are actually violas. And that was always so interesting to me because violas are so integral into creating such really beautiful harmonies. Like, odds are if you're hearing a really cool chord or or whatever, it's because a viola is playing a funky note in the middle of it.
That's an interesting way of describing it. With the work that you guys at D-Composed have been doing, and the goal of featuring and focusing on Black artists and the impact and the influence of Black artists in music across the board, what have been some of your, I'd say, most revealing moments about the history of Black composers and Black artists and the influence of music across the globe?
That's a good question. I think, at least in classical music, I'm a classically trained artist. I went to school. I have 2 degrees in classical music. And so much of my education is focused on not only just non-Black composers, but specifically just white men that are European. And so in my work with D-Composed and constantly finding new Black composers that are living and also ones from a long time ago, it's been so interesting to see that Black people have always had a presence in, pretty much every genre of music, but especially classical music. And something I learned a long time ago was that Black people had, a very active hand in keeping classical music present in the United States when the States was being colonized, because slaves that were brought over from Africa, string playing was so innate to them that they were able to teach slave masters' children how to play these instruments. And it really, connects all these lines together, like how this music has even been able to thrive in this country, when it did thrive. And how so many composers, like staple classical music composers like Anthony Dvorak and an American composer, Charles Ives, were so directly inspired by the music of Black people all throughout history. Dvorak even said, I don't know Dvorak, but he was a Czech composer who journey throughout the States during the period of his life. And he's now one of the most prolific composers in classical music. But he said the future of this country's music is from Black people. And he quotes spirituals all the time in his classical compositions. And that is just so, I think, indicative of what is so incredible about Black musicians in this field, that we've always been here and always inspired other people to continue to do better, explore more.
Yeah, and making sure the barriers in that space are kept down, not just taken down, but kept down as we go forward.
And if there are barriers,
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Wilfred, go ahead.
I'm saying if there are barriers, then maybe just creating your own space. That's kind of, what Decomposed is.
Yeah, you definitely have done that, particularly, again, like I said earlier, in the space that not a lot of people would think and somewhat cottagey, but also a really cool way to celebrate Black culture and creativity, Black composers in chamber music. So great to have you with us, man. I'm a music dude, and always love it when we can have someone on that can speak to the many outlets of music here in the Chicagoland area. And now I'm glad that you're now part of our city and part of one of the organizations that's keeping music and listening strong. The event again, tell us about the event again on Sunday as we wrap up this segment.
Yes, so the event on Sunday is called The Listening Field. It'll be at the K. Ryan Center for the Arts, and it's a collaboration between us, Decomposed, and Geneva Woods. And our music will be an exploration of the relationship Black people have with the earth, or have had with the earth until now in time. And all of our music will be put together with different types of text, so whether it be singing songs or poetry. And also Jamila's going to bring in sound bowls and other more soothing instruments. So the whole point is for people just kind of to relax and really feel connected to the earth.
Got it. A good way to be connected right now with so much of the disparity that's taking place. And we're glad that we were able to have you on for a brief bit this morning. Wilfred Farquharson from D-Composed, thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time out to chat about what's happening with your group this weekend, or particularly specifically on Sunday. Thanks for being with us. We'll check in with you in the weeks to come about other upcoming events that you guys have and what's happening with D-Composed. Sound good?
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Good luck with the show on Sunday. Have a good rest of the week. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. There we go, guys. A little reminder, if you have a chance to make it out, Sunday, April 27th, from 5 to 6:30 p.m. at the Caron Center for the Arts here in Chicago. Just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a update on what's happening with a really wonderful local kind of cottage group when it comes to music, and that's Decomposed. Okay, Dev, we will not take a break. We'll just kind of keep ourselves moving as we wrap up today's show. I want to circle back as I'm going through my notes and things that we're going to talk about today in terms of topics. Let's see, how do I want to launch into this, because it's a short amount of time, but I do want to mention this briefly as briefly as I can. I watched the conversations that went back and forth between David Hogg and James Carville. And you guys know who James Carville is, and many people have become more aware who David Hogg is. And he's a young man who was a survivor of the Marjorie Stoneman shooting in Florida back in 2018. And he's been moving forward in the political conversation. And I guess I'll give you the edited version so you guys can read it yourself. But I listened to conversation that they had, or a conversation and interviews about things that they said about each other is probably a better way of putting it. And it's become a big deal. And what this basically centers on is the approach and how we want to go about pushing our leaders to do more, to run faster, and to run better when it comes to where we are currently. And we heard Dr. Ajilore talk about the importance of pushing our leaders. And I believe there's a way to do it, but there's also a way not to do it. And I wrote an article and posted it yesterday on my Substack page about what I see in this space. And it's entitled A Message to David Hogg and the Young Guns. And check it out and tell me what you think. And give me your thoughts maybe tomorrow or the next day if you have a chance to read it today. But the basics of the article are around how we want to make sure that we are pushing our leaders forward and to take on the challenges that are in front of them, our politically elected, democratically elected folks. But there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And I want to see our young guys, and you guys know last week I had a chance to interview a young man out of Indiana who's running against Victoria Sparks. And I made a couple recommendations in terms of what I thought he could do or how he should approach his campaign and how he's running. And I said a little bit of that same thing that I said to Jackson Franklin last Friday. I said a little bit of that in my article that I posted on Substack to the Young Guns. And you guys will get the gist of it when you check it out. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this particular article, because I think that we have to make sure that we're, that we're giving guidance and we're giving suggestions without getting in the way of what some of the young folks are doing. But there is a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. So let me know what you think tomorrow. You can email me your thoughts as well if you happen to have a chance to read it today. It's at Choose Views on my Substack page. There you go. I hope you've enjoyed the clips today, and apologize for my coughing. I don't know what it is that got in my system that's, made me a little bit stuffy this morning. But there you go. Sometimes that happens. Tomorrow's show, we will have our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 will be with us. And we'll also be talking to Mark Doyle, founder of Rags of Honor and Veteran Roasters. And Representative Abdul Nasser Rashid will be with us. So stay tuned for tomorrow's show. But as always, take a deep breath and make your life count. We will see you tomorrow.
Are you tired of talking to yourself? We can get you an audience on the radio. You can produce and host your own radio show on one of our 2 stations. Please call 773-792-1121. That's 773-792-1121 and ask for Mark. Limited space available.
This is Tony Moray. I'm an estate planning lawyer who drafts living trusts and wills. Since the election, I've been hearing from my clients, many of them fellow WCPT listeners. And we all wonder, how did this happen and what can we do? The how is, of course, very complicated. My thoughts as regard to what we can do is simple but important. We need to take extra care of those we love. Having an estate plan using either a living trust or will can provide comfort